Okay, perfect. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Clap once if you hear me. Clap twice. All right, thank you. We're starting with applause right away. Thank you all for being here bright and early. Good morning and welcome to the first segment of the 2024 Arab Conference at Harvard. I'm Ahmed, the director of the healthcare track this year and organizer with this incredible conference since my arrival at Harvard many years ago in 2019. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Kayum Ahmed, who will be moderating this panel on war and medicine and addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, a topic which could not have been more timely. Dr. Kayum Ahmed is a South African activist scholar who teaches health and human rights advocacy at Columbia University School of Public Health. In addition, he serves as a faculty co-lead on racial equity at New York City's Pandemic Response Institute. Previously, he held the role of division director at the Open Society Foundation's public health program, where he worked on ensuring equitable global health access to COVID-19 vaccines. Before relocating to New York, Kayum served as chief executive officer of the South African Human Rights Commission from 2010 to 2015. During this period, he led a team of 178 colleagues to monitor, protect, and promote human rights in South Africa and oversaw the management of nearly 45,000 human rights cases. Dr. Ahmed holds a PhD in education from Columbia University, as well as various law degrees from universities of Oxford, Cape Town, and Leiden. In addition, he has degrees in anthropology and theology. And more recently, Kayum published a children's book called A is for Amanda, the ABC guide for young revolutionaries and their parents. Please join me in welcoming Kayum Ahmed. I will now pass it off to him to introduce our brilliant panelists, Dr. Ghassan Abu-Sittah and Matt Gilbert. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hiba, for that very, very warm welcome and introduction. My name is Kayum. It's so wonderful to be here with all of you. And I want to give a shout out to the organizers of this incredible conference who have had to do this under very, very difficult circumstances. So deep appreciation to all of you for being here. As Hiba mentioned, I currently teach at Columbia University School of Public Health. And 2 days ago, I was delivering meals to students who had spent the night at an encampment on the main campus to protest. And as I was there with a couple of other faculty handing out warm meals, the NYPD showed up and arrested, as you may have seen, more than 100 students, some of my students who have now been expelled from Columbia University. And it's incredibly hard to try and make sense of this particular moment, this moment that we find ourselves in at academic institutions, including institutions like Harvard. But of course, this is one moment among many over the last several months and decades of trying to make sense of what's unfolding in Palestine. And one of the ways I try to do so is by reflecting on the incredible knowledge and wisdom of Palestinian poets, artists, and scholars. And so I wanted to start this conversation by reading a poem by Noor Hindi from her series, Dear God, Dear Bones, Dear Yellow. The poem is called A Day, a Life, When a Medic Was Killed in Gaza. Was it an accident? The poem is dedicated for Ruzan al-Najjar after or in defiance of a piece published by the New York Times about al-Najjar. And what about the flowers on her scarf? Her white medical coat, now red. Nails painted pink as a tongue, a sunset, a pomegranate. How tear gas forms clouds above the dead. How a land, force-fed bullets and blood ruptures its stomach and swings it at a flag. Tell me, why my people's deaths become a hopeless, endless conflict and the lives war wastes. What murders become accident, unintentional, in the eyes of those who name my father's tears an unending, and insolvable cycle of violence. Tell me about the 30 witnesses and witness interviews and 1,000 photos and videos it took for you to name our resistance as drama. Tell me, in a country that allows 4 hours of electricity a day, how people live in darkness, hold the keys to homes blown up by soldiers, while a mother clutches her daughter, now dead, takes off Ghassan's white gloves, grieves the sun and its impenetrable light, remembers the toy stethoscopes Ghassan played with as a child, then stares into the eyes of an Israeli soldier and laughs. That's a poem by Noor Hindi, reflecting on the death of another Palestinian healthcare worker, Ghassan al-Najjar, the murder by the Israeli army several years ago. The poet herself portrays the poetry and the story as an act of resistance, as she puts it, in defiance of a piece published by the New York Times, as an alternative to the narratives that we continue about Palestine today. And so as I read this poem to try and make sense of this moment, I'm also joined by 2 incredible activists, scholars, healthcare workers, to help us all make sense of this moment. And the many moments, even the moments before October 7th, that have made us feel angry and disillusioned, but have also simultaneously filled us with hope and inspiration. And so I'm joined by Ghassan Abu-Sittah, who joins us online. Unfortunately, Ghassan wasn't able to be here in person because he was denied entry into the United States. And of course, Dr. Mads Gilbert, 2 of the most thoughtful and committed activists working at the intersection of war and medicine. Dr. Ghassan Abu-Sittah, now I know we started a little late, so I'm going to not read the entire bios, but Dr. Ghassan Abu-Sittah is a British Palestinian plastic and reconstructive surgeon who spent several weeks working in hospitals in northern Gaza in 2023. He is a passionate and active humanitarian who has worked as a war surgeon in numerous conflict zones, including Syria, Yemen, Iraq, South Lebanon, and the Gaza Strip. Since Dr. Ghassan Abu-Sittah returned to Gaza and returned from Gaza after the events on October 7th, where he provided medical assistance with Doctors Without Borders out of the Al-Shifa hospital, he has been one of the most influential and outspoken advocates for Palestinian liberation. In January 2024, he traveled to The Hague to meet with the International Criminal Court investigators. And in April 2024, he was elected the rector of the University of Glasgow. Dr. Mads Gilbert, who is here with us in person, has been active as a medical solidarity worker with Palestinians since 1981, mostly in Gaza for the last 20 years. He is a Norwegian humanitarian, medical doctor and professor, specialized in anesthesiology and emergency medicine at the Arctic University of Norway, and a senior consultant at Clinic of Emergency Medicine at the University Hospital of North Norway in Tromsø, where he lives, which is formerly a twin city with Gaza since 2002. So please join me in warmly welcoming our panelists today. I want to start off by asking you, Ghassan and Mads, to help us understand how you have been making sense of these moments, of what's been unfolding across Palestine over the last several months, but also in the decades preceding October 7th. And more particularly, if you could help us make sense of the attacks, the blatant attacks by Israel on healthcare workers and healthcare more generally in Gaza and the West Bank. Ghassan, over to you.
Thank you very much for the organizers, and thank you for this kind introduction. Yesterday morning, we woke up, and I'm not sure whether that rumor had reached Mads of the possible release of our friend, Dr. Mohammed Abu-Sittah, the medical director of Shifa Hospital, who was arrested from a WHO convoy, and whose torture has become well known when survivors of the internment camps came out to describe how, because he had refused to testify on screen, that the Israeli narrative of Shifa being a military base, because he had refused to make that kind of false testimony, he was tortured so badly they broke both his arms. He was then forced to walk on all four limbs with a chain around his neck and eat from a plate on the ground. And it is unfortunately by a few hours later that we discovered that this was a rumor and he has not been released. And like over 50 Palestinian health workers, amongst them many of our friends, Dr. Ahmed, the medical director of Al-Auda Hospital in Jabalia, and so many others, remain hostages by the Israeli military in order to try to torture them into admitting the Israeli story that the Palestinian health system is really just a front for military activity. And as someone who worked in Beirut during the siege in '82, as Mads did, we have to always remember that the first wave of air raids in Beirut in 1982 at the beginning of the siege were the bombing raids on the Palestine Red Crescent Society hospitals. And therefore, this recent attack is not the first attack, but what is different is the way that the dismantlement and the destruction of the Palestinian health system is such a critical component of the war effort. From the day that I, with my colleagues, stood in front of the world, trying to implore the world after the massacre of Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital on the 17th of October, that what we were witnessing was the beginning of a campaign of destruction of the health system as a way of making Gaza uninhabitable. From that day onwards until today, and all the horrors that we've seen, from the destruction of the pediatric hospitals in the north to the attacks on Nasser Hospital, to the use of drones against the patients trying to get into the hospitals, and then finally to the massacre of the doctors and the patients at Shifa Hospital. That systematic destruction of the Palestinian health system, that performative necropolitics, the way the Israelis not only wanted to destroy the health system, but wanted to perform that violence in a way that kind of has never been seen before. The way the premature dead babies at Nasser Hospital were lined up to be on a stretcher to be found by the ICRC teams when they came in, the way that Shifa is torched, the way that Nasser is attacked in a performative way, is that goes beyond what is necessary for military or security reason, is proof that at its very essence, Zionist settler colonialism is an attack on Palestinian life. And because the Palestinian health system represents Palestinian life, it was critical that this genocidal war have at its heart the destruction of the health system.
Thank you for that incredibly powerful reflection, Ghassan. I appreciate your references to ideas like performative necropolitics, and of course necropolitics and necropower derived from Cameroonian scholars' work as a counter to the biopolitical narrative developed by Foucault. Achille Mbembe develops this idea of necropolitics and necropower. And so I think using that as a framework for making sense of what you see unfolding is really, really powerful. I know, Mads, for you, you've developed this idea of evidence-based solidarity, again, as a framework for understanding the current crisis. And I'm wondering whether you could share some more reflections on this. And I know you've got some slides that you might want to share with us as well.
Yeah, good morning. Salam alaikum, everyone. And salam alaikum, my brother Ghassan in UK. Thank you for the invitation, and to Heba and all the other brilliant organizers. I'm incredibly impressed that you are actually holding this week in this hostile environment that seems to prevail among the powers in the US and also in Europe, because Ghassan was not only not attending the workshop in Germany, he was virtually thrown out, and the German police stormed the venue, cut the electricity, and behaved like the Nazi police. So we are in a very harsh climate now, and I think we should give a big applause to our brothers and sisters in Colombia who are fighting actually for the freedom now. So inshallah, let's not hope that it turns out to be Kent 2024. You all remember Kent State University, which was a turning point in the solidarity movement on this soil, the United States, to support the brave people of Vietnam in their victorious struggle against the US imperialism, because that was obviously a turning point. So I think, you know, what's happening here, and I think Ghassan and I, we are very committed to talking to you because you have the keys. It is the US who have the keys now. The US public have the keys to a change in the politics on the colonial settler project against Palestine. So my term, the evidence-based solidarity, is because I come from medicine. I'm a scientist. I'm also a professor, and of course we are basing our treatment, our decisions on evidence, scientific evidence. And I think we need to put that evidence-based into the solidarity work. We're good at formulating slogans. We need to do that. Make demonstrations. We need to do that. But we also need to dig deeper into the knowledge base of what the Israeli project, what the Israeli attack, what Israeli destruction of Palestine is. And I think one of the reasons why medicine has become so much in the focal point is that we have been producing evidence over the last 20 years. We have been doing research. We have been publishing scientific numbers, statistics, and descriptions of what goes on in the sharp end of the Israeli attacks on Palestine, be it in the diaspora, Beirut, be it in the West Bank or in Gaza. And the occupiers, the Israelis, they fear this knowledge. They fear this evidence. It's much more easy to have some slogan running around about terrorists and blah, blah. But when we produce science and we publish that in British Medical Journal and in the Lancet, we don't get it published in New England Journal of Medicine or in JAMA because they constantly actually boycott academic information on Palestine. But this evidence is important to have a broader base when we have the discourse on the situation in Palestine. So that's one aspect of evidence-based medicine. The other is, of course, that for ordinary people all over the world, they need to see what's really happening. And I'm sure that if everyone on this globe could see 3 minutes of live transmission of the Israeli atrocities in Gaza and in the West Bank, before the newscast, before the Champions League soccer matches, they would say, we don't want this world, because ordinary people all over the world, they would stand up, as they do in millions now, and say that this way of treating the others, the human beings, brothers and sisters of us, regardless of their political stance, would be completely unacceptable. And this is one of my favorite t-shirts. I bought it in Al-Quds. It says Kuluna Gaza, which means we are all Gaza. You remember that slogan from the attack on Charlie Hebdo in Paris. And I mean it when I say we are all Gaza. And The next slide, if we can just turn on that one, it shows part of what we also need to, okay, it's not coming, maybe later. What we need to understand is how this Israeli politics against the healthcare system is also an attack on the knowledge base of the Palestinian people. In addition to the necropolitics, it is part of the politics of elimination, because every people, any people on earth need a healthcare system as a safety net in their society. That's where we go when we're in trouble, when we're injured or sick, and healthcare is part of a functioning society. So why do the Israelis so viciously attack healthcare? And they've done that, as Ghassan said, since '81. And there are tons of reports. During the period from the 7th of October until the 14th of February, the WHO documented more than 500, close to 600 Israeli attacks on healthcare in Gaza. And the only thing people or the media have been talking about is Shifa. It's a systematic attack to completely destroy healthcare. And why is that? Well, number one, you reduce the will to fight among the ordinary people, to resist, because you need to know that your kids or your family is safe when and if you're injured. And number two, you completely eradicate the knowledge base of the people. And that has a name. That's called the epistemicide, which means to eradicate the knowledge of the indigenous people as part of the politics of elimination. So now we can't only look at the numbers of killed, which are important enough, but we need to look at the broader meaning of this massive systematic attacks on healthcare and on universities and on schools and on scholars and on medical staff and on doctors. So it is a system, it is a planned politics, and it has the goal of course, getting rid of the Palestinian people and their knowledge. That's the seriousness of it. Yeah. So this picture, just to follow up, this is one of the beautiful mosques. The Israelis have bombed close to 300 mosques and 3 churches in Gaza. Does that have any military meaning? No. It's part of the epistemicide, the culture of the Palestinian people, Islam, and their music, their poetry, their medicine, their science, and all the universities. So let me see, here. The second point I want to make before I stop, I don't want to take time from Gaza. And I actually hate this position of being a spoiled white male from Europe, part of the most atrocious colonial part of the world, and being the one to talk about healthcare in Gaza. Dr. Youssef Dr. Youssef should be sitting here, who is the Minister of Health in Gaza. Why is he never invited? Why can he not come? Just the same reason as for Dr. Ghassan, not allowed. Do you know who is the Minister of Health in Gaza? No, exactly. Why is he not the one speaking? Why should I be speaking? Anyway, the second point I want to make is this balance between suffering and strength. This is a picture from Gaza, from the beach. He's amputated. He has made this beautiful carving in the sand. And this is, for me, this is Gaza, this is Palestine. The resistance, the sumud, the willingness to sacrifice yourself for the better of the others. So to me, the healthcare workers in Gaza are holding the moral compass of the world these days. That's where we should look to find what values are actually meaning. Thank you.
Thank you, Maz, for that, again, eloquent reflection on both, as you say, sort of hope, solidarity, and also recognizing the destruction of the healthcare system in Gaza. I definitely want to return to your idea of epistemicide in a bit, but I want to turn to Ghassan for a moment again. Ghassan, in an interview that was published with you very recently, just last month, in fact, entitled "The Doctor's Role in Liberation," you state, and I quote, "Health has always played a much more central role in the Palestinian liberation movement and the ideas of Palestinian self-determination than in other places," close quotes. Can you help us understand the intersections between health and liberation, and more specifically, the role that you've taken on as a medical doctor fighting for Palestinian liberation?
I mean, historically, if we look back at the very first generation to graduate after the 1948 Nakba and the emergence of the free clinics in the refugee camps in Jordan and in Lebanon, and then the central role that the Palestinian people insisted that the Palestine Red Crescent Society has within the structure of the PLO, and the building of the hospitals and the clinics in refugee camps in Lebanon and in Syria. And then the attacks on the Palestinians in Lebanon, the stories and the steadfastness of during the siege of the camp of Tel Zatar in '76, and then the destruction of these health centers as an integral part of the invasion of Lebanon in '82, and the siege of Beirut, where my colleague Mads was a young anesthetist. And then when we moved, and the center of Palestinian politics moved back to Palestine, the way the medical relief committees and the health workers committees were a central component of the first Intifada and the mobilization. I think we realized that even before we had a name to it, we had caught on to the centrality of necropolitics in the Zionist colonial project. And therefore, the antithesis of that necropolitics is the politics of life and the politics of health. And therefore, that then became as a tool, both as resistance and as mobilization. I think we believe as a society and as a people that those threads of solidarity that form between people, nothing allows us to weave them the way the provision of healthcare allows us. And nothing allows us to mobilize our people around that continuum between the major liberation ideas of self-determination, of ending settler colonialism, of fighting against Zionism, and the day-to-day lives of people and the way that settler colonialism crushes them. But as a surgeon, and particularly in my work as a plastic surgeon, looking at reconstructing the war-injured body, the way that what differentiates settler colonialism from other forms of occupation is that settler colonialism starts after the land is occupied. And therefore, the body of the indigenous native is the battleground. And therefore, that performative violence, that violation has to take place in the body of the on the body of the indigenous population. And that's when medicine comes in as part of the resistance to that violation.
That's incredibly powerful. I feel like it's a common theme, this separation between, or this connection rather, between the body and the land. In work I do with a number of indigenous communities here in the United States, the Lenape in New York, Navajo Nation, Chamorro, and the Koyan San in South Africa. This intrinsic connection between the land and the body is critically important. I think this analysis of the impact of the occupation and settler colonialism of the land on the bodies is a fascinating one, which I think turns very neatly to a question for you, Mads, around this idea of how we frame the conversation, how we use words to try and make sense of what's unfolding. And epistemicide is one of those terms that you've identified. I'm even thinking about the title for this panel, War and Medicine. Putting these two words next to each other seems almost paradoxical. I think of how hospitals, which are meant to be centers of healing, which are created to save lives, have become death zones. And so what this conflict, what this ongoing Nakba has done is to create in some ways an inversion of reality, perhaps a dystopian reality. And so in your work with healthcare workers in Gaza, and I know you're constantly in touch with folks in Gaza. In fact, you said you spoke to some of them just this morning. How are they grappling with this inversion of reality, this dystopian reality where hospitals have effectively become death zones?
Thank you. I'd just like to follow up briefly on what Ghassan just said about the body and the land, because if you look at the way that the Israeli occupation army is attacking the people of the land, I mean, we've seen what they've done to the land in North Gaza now. It's completely eradicated. They don't always shoot or bomb to kill. They shoot and attack to maim, and to send a signal to the occupied people, to the indigenous people, that if you resist us, this is what's going to happen to you and to your kids. And if you look at some of the directives that came during the Intifada, it was the broken bone politics. It was to grab the people who opposed the occupiers and break their bones in order to tell them, you know, don't try. And what we have seen in our research in Gaza, where we have researched on traumatic amputations, we found that the majority were coming from drones, and actually the largest number of traumatic amputations from drone rockets and attacks from drones came between the periods of military attacks and during the Hudna, during the ceasefire times. And they could easily have killed the ones that they attacked, but rather they would maim them and take off their legs and arms. And we could also show that for every traumatic amputation, you need on an average 10 surgeries to reconstruct that person's ability to walk, to work, to whatever, manage their lives. Now we know there are at least 1,000 pediatric amputated patients in Gaza. So they have amputated 1,000 children. Multiply that by 10, and there is a backlog of 10,000 surgeries in Gaza now. Add that to the systematic destruction of the healthcare, you have a very dramatic picture. During the Great March of Return, they were also killing quite a large number, but they were maiming a much larger number by the snipers, more than 100 snipers along the fence. And they were shooting. Where did they shoot? To the heart and the head? No. To the joints, to the knee joint, the ankles, the arms, the elbows, in order, again, to invalidate and to tell the ones who oppose the occupiers that this is what's going to happen to you. Like they grab the kids who are throwing stones in the West Bank, attack the family in the middle of the night, raid their homes to scare. It's a complete system of telling the oppressed that don't even think about opposing the oppressed. So, and again, here the medical side comes in order to be a place to seek refuge. The hospitals, of course, they are temples of mercy. They are temples of compassion, of solidarity with the weaker friend, with your weaker brother or sister. And by destroying the healthcare system, they are trying all the time also to undermine the will to resist. And I just wanted to make a point about the sources, because evidence-based solidarity need that we study sources. And when I am trying to follow up every day from Gaza, one of my important sources is Dr. Youssef Aborish, who is the Minister of Health, MOH, Minister of Health in Gaza. And you know, they've always been producing brilliant data. We have tested how they do the data acquisition, and it's good enough for the Lancet, it's good enough for the State Department here in the United States and for the UN. There is absolutely no doubt about the scientific quality of what the Palestinian doctors like Dr. Ghassan Abu-Sittah and his colleagues are doing. It's brilliant. Now, one of the first things the Israelis destroyed in Gaza was not only hospitals, it was also the data acquisition system, the health information system, and their computers, because they don't want any data. Second source, the United Nations Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Occupied Palestinian Territory, the flash updates. I hope you subscribe to them. They come almost every day. They look like this. It's a one-page A4 with complete data on everything you need to know. So just take a note of that. OCHA OPT flash updates. And they have this page, and they have a more complete 5, 6, 7, 8 page update. And if you look at the numbers on the genocide, just to show you the importance of these numbers, this is the graph from yesterday. And you see the curve, the red curve is the number of killed. Can you see how smooth that curve is? How systematic the killing is? I have a fantasy that Israeli generals actually have an order from Netanyahu to kill a certain number of people so that you have this slight but ever increasing number of killed. And you see at the same curve, if we had mathematicians make a formula for that, it's probably a pretty systematic mathematical formula they're using, like what we are seeing now with the Lavendel system, where they use AI to identify and kill. This is the last numbers from the Ministry of Health, also from yesterday. They do not deviate much, the numbers from WHO, UN, and these numbers are available to all the Ministry of Foreign Affairs all over the world. My Minister of Foreign Affairs, they have this number, and the shocking thing is that they've had these numbers for 6 months. They've been sitting idly watching the number of killed children and women and destroyed hospitals and killed healthcare workers every day without doing anything. And that, to me, is one of the big moral disasters of 2023, 2024, the collapse of any morality in the Western world, because had they had any morality and not been embedded in their own racist understanding of Palestine, this would have changed. This would have changed. So we need to sanitize our language. We need to talk more about colonialism, apartheid, racism, epistemicide, and sadism. I'll come back to that, not to take too much time.
Thank you, Mez. I appreciate the inclusion of sadism, which, as we discussed earlier on, is sort of a reference to wonderful scholar Edward Said's work here. Perhaps I see that we are running out of time, and I do want to create space for audience members to ask some questions. So I'm going to ask one final question for both Ghassan and Mads. And then for those who'd like to ask some questions, please feel free to begin lining up at the microphones on either sides of the auditorium, and we can begin taking questions immediately after this final question is answered. I want to perhaps end where I started off, which was on my reflections on what is taking place at Columbia University at the moment. At Columbia School of Public Health, where I teach health and human rights advocacy, I teach on land that was stolen through a genocide of indigenous Lenape people at a school of public health named after a wealthy white man with no discernible connection whatsoever to public health. In a building named after another wealthy white man who donated huge amounts of money that he accumulated through farmer capitalism. In a classroom named after a bank involved in the 2008 financial crisis. So the infusion of capitalism into the epistemic architecture of academic institutions at Columbia, and I imagine here at Harvard as well, is profoundly important in our analysis of what we teach at these institutions. And at Harvard, of course, we are located on traditional and ancestral land of the Massachusetts, the original inhabitants of what is now Boston and Cambridge. And it feels as if academic institutions reflect in some ways the epistemic elements of war, of capitalism, of colonialism, far more than they reflect the healing mission of medicine. And Ghassan, I know that you are now responsible for a new academic institution. You'll be playing a very important leadership role there. I'm wondering whether you can reflect on the role of academic institutions in how we teach, how we engage, how we also simultaneously erase Palestine from the classroom, and what this might mean for students and other academics in the audience who are grappling with these challenges at the moment.
Could I just have an insert to that? Because I don't know if the audience knows it, but Ghassan Abu-Sittah was just recently, a few weeks ago, elected rector at the University of Glasgow. Bravo, bravo.
So Ghassan, do you want to take that question?
Yes. So just very quickly, so the position of rector in Scottish universities is an elected position. And when it had started, and the position in Glasgow University had been occupied by none other than Arthur Balfour, who warned against the world being full of savage communities that are no different than the prehistoric man in his acceptance speech. When but with the evolution of free education post Second World War, Jimmy Reed, the communist union leader, was elected. And then when I arrived in Glasgow in the 80s, the students had chose to elect Winnie Mandela as to indicate their solidarity with the people of South Africa and their willingness to join the struggle, the anti-apartheid struggle. And therefore, the decision of the students to nominate me and then to double the turnout and vote with an overwhelming majority of 80% was an indication that if freed from capital, universities can play a critical role in emancipation, and that students do not view universities as where they stay until they join the world, but a stage where they shape the world that they want they want to join, rather than the world that they are going to inherit. And we find ourselves at Glasgow University battling with a lot of the issues that a lot of universities are battling with. Glasgow University owns shares in BAE Systems that makes the weapons that kill the Palestinians and have killed my patients and have killed Dima Al-Hajj, the Glasgow University alumni, who's a health worker working in the WHO, when they killed her and her baby and all of her family. And we, the students want to end this barbaric legacy of centers of education being owners of arms manufacturing company. What we're watching, be it in Colombia or at Glasgow University or at campuses all over the world, is that again, Palestine is the bellwether and the lightning rod, where the moral issues of Palestine transcend the geographic, and therefore is becoming the rallying call for a new generation. And the attempts at silencing us, whether again it's in Colombia or in Berlin or in San Diego or anywhere that people are speaking out against this genocide and against what is critical about this genocide, which we have to see, is that this genocide is an iceberg of which Israel is only the tip. That the genocide is the axis of genocide. The United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, France, Holland, these countries are supporting the genocide, not just supporting Israel. They are supporting the project of the genocide, because as the president of Colombia, the country, has said, that what they're doing to Gaza is trying to send a message to all of the peoples in the Southern Hemisphere, that if you were to step out of line and try to change the balance of power, this is what we will do to you. And part of the performative violence that is necessary in this genocidal war is a message that was clearly understood by the people of South Africa, clearly understood by the people in Namibia and in Brazil and in Colombia and everywhere else, that we are performing this violence against the Palestinians, but we have our eye on you. and this is where I think the students very much understood the importance of Gaza. Gaza for the last 20, 25 years has become the lab by which global capital devises and produces technologies and philosophy aimed at managing surplus population. And these surplus populations, like the Palestinians, are politically surplus, or like the refugees being drowned in the Mediterranean are socially surplus, or like the chronically poor be it in Nairobi and in Sao Paulo and in Mumbai, or in the council estates of Scotland and the post-industrial cities of the United Kingdom and Europe. These technologies that are being tested on the Palestinians and philosophy, be it the quadcopters that are little drones with sniper guns attached to them that patrol the vicinity of hospitals in Gaza and fire at people trying to get in, all of these will make it through. And I want to emphasize why it is critical we build this movement now. That, you know, what we've watched also is this demonic alliance between the Zionists and the Hinduistas in India, and that the weapons that Netanyahu uses today, Modi will use tomorrow on greater numbers of people. And so it's critical that we see their unity, the unity of our oppressor, that it should be reflected in our unity, the unity of those resisting the oppression and those who are the targets of that oppression.
Excellent. Thank you for that deep reflection, Ghassan. I again want to invite folks who would like to ask some questions to begin lining up at the microphones on either side of the podium. And as you're doing that, perhaps offering an opportunity, Mads, to you to perhaps talk through a little bit about these words that you see in front of you. A funny story is I have to do a lot of fundraising for my sins. And there are certain words I'm not allowed to use at fundraising events. And so my team has printed a T-shirt with exactly the same list of words, except sadism, which I'm going to ask them to add to the list. So please tell us a bit more about, this list of words and what this means to you.
Thank you. And I, of course, agree with everything Dr. Ghassan has said. And I think medicine is a sparrowhead of liberation because it supports the people fighting. And it also generates a lot of important knowledge about the character of the occupiers and the colonizers. And it's also a tool of oppression, because by attacking, diminishing, and emptying medicine of its content, you are disengaging and discouraging the fighting people. So the epistemicide was defined by Sousa Santos. It's a systematic destruction of any indigenous knowledge base, any knowledge which doesn't converge with the occupier's knowledge system. It doesn't believe in fusion or exchange of knowledge, but complete disregard of the other's knowledge. And that's exactly what we see the Israelis and the US government's attacks on the Palestinian knowledge by erasing universities and scholars. These are some of the many scholars killed systematically in targeted attacks, executions in Gaza during these 6 months. And Israel has destroyed every university in the Gaza Strip. Of course, not because they're military targets, but because there are the temples of knowledge and the temples of developing knowledge, research, and to educate. And as Ghassan said, the Palestinian people has always been the most educated people, actually not only in the Middle East, but in the world, has the highest literacy rate in the world, always been extremely curious and hardworking on getting more knowledge for all of us, not only for Palestine. So the number of killed students has, according to this UNRWA, it's almost 6,000, 260 educational staff killed, and there is virtually today no ability for any Palestinian student, kid, anywhere to have any education, and that's part of the epistemicide. And I'd like to end by saying, you know, people, when you discuss with people, they say this is such a difficult conflict. No, This is not a difficult conflict. This is a difficult occupation. And I support, like the Norwegian Solidarity Movement, we support the Palestinian right to resist the occupation with arms within the limits of the Geneva Convention. I don't support Hamas. I don't support Fatah or Shihad or PA or anybody. I support the Palestinian people in their right to execute this fight. And to end with our beloved Edward Said, he said actually in 2003, in fact, I cannot think of any other country on earth that in full view of nightly TV audiences has performed such miracles of detailed sadism against an entire society and gotten away with it. What we see now in Gaza, that they are denying pregnant women clean water to clean. They're denying premature babies an incubator. They're denying the kids water and food. They're denying the medical system even anesthetics. They pick it out from the relief trucks at Khmer Shalom or Rafah, the Israelis. They take out anything they don't want the Palestinian to have, way beyond the double use or the military purpose of that item. They take out all the external fixators needed for the fracture treatment. This is pure evil. This is pure racism. And Gaza is the home of the brave, the Palestinian healthcare workers, and unimaginable Palestinian bravery. All the time they are trying to find solutions. All the time they find solutions, and they never give up. And my last slide is this one. The heroes are the Palestinian, the medical staff, the volunteer, the leaders, and the whole people of Gaza. So they carry our morality on their shoulders, and we should support them with more actions, more discussions, and more mobilizing, even in the United States. Thank you very much. Shukran.
Thank you so much, Mads, and thank you for ending on such an important, positive and hopeful and optimistic note. I now want to turn over to our audience members. We'll start with you. Please try and keep your questions as brief as possible so we can get as many questions into the panel. And we'll take 3 questions at a time. We'll go 1 each, and then we'll ask Ghassan and Mads to just make some notes and then respond to the questions. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much for the panel, for your wisdom and for your reflections. A major theme that has come out of this panel is the theme of censorship, especially of Palestinian doctors and healthcare researchers. So my question is to both Dr. Ghassan Abu-Sittah and Dr. Gilbert. What advice would you have or would you offer to a budding healthcare researcher or healthcare worker who wants to dedicate their career to medicine as a form of resistance?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
Hello. Is it on? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you so much. So I work in public health. I have a background in immigrant health, and I studied like some human rights work. And one thing public health institutions that I've come across is a lot of sanitization and whitewashing of a lot of health justice issues and health equity issues, to the point where there's a complete lack of acknowledgement of occupation as a root cause of destruction and death. So for everyone in the panel, how do you navigate those systems, especially when you are an Arab trying to promote the health of your people within a system that actively wants you destroyed?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll take one more question, and then we'll take the other 3.
I just want to echo the sentiments. Thank you to the panelists. I have a question, and I want to continue exploring the last question that was posed to the panelists. So I'm a medical researcher at Cornell University, the Ithaca campus, and while working alongside other student activists, I realized I was surrounded by students from the humanities. And there's an absence of students from STEM. Now, numerous statements have circulated, and when I read the fields that these students and faculty hail from, again, I only see humanities students and faculty. Now, Cornell, we just held a referendum calling on the undergraduate student body to vote on divestment from weapons companies. So please look out for those results Monday morning. But in response to this referendum, I, for the first time, have seen statements from STEM folk against divestment. So what does this say about the unique complicity of STEM in upholding the status quo, and how do we break out of this cycle?
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, Maz, would you like to start us off? Or Hassan, do you want to start us off? Please go ahead.
So the reason and the beauty of a medical and a health career is it allows you to enter people allow you to enter their lives in a very intimate way. And you are able to stand at the coalface of the political, the economic, and the social, and the way they shape and contort people's lives. But the way power functions is that it denies you the lenses with which to see what you're looking at. And therefore, the answer to the first question and to the last question is that in the clinic, in order to see what you're looking at, Fanon needs to be part of your medical curriculum. James Baldwin needs to be part of your medical curriculum. In order to write your CV and understand what your boss is talking about, Hannah Arendt needs to be part of your curriculum. Not because they will teach you about the delivery of care, but they will teach you about the diagnosis of disease.
I think we may have a technical difficulty. So maybe let's give...
It's just Mossad that woke up in the morning.
Maz, do you want to jump into some of those questions while we reconnect with Hassan?
Sure. No.
And in order to use as a mechanism...
Are you back?
As a mechanism... Have I gotten cut out?
You froze for a few seconds, but we heard you refer to Fanon to be part of and Baldwin to be part of the curriculum. That's where you cut off.
And again, you know, in order to understand your bosses who are trying to censor you, you need to read Hannah Arendt. All of these are lenses by which, once you are in the clinic, you see they reveal the world and they allow you to diagnose the problems that your patients truly suffer from and that are shaping and contorting their lives and are carving out ill health into their normal life. And so the same happens in public health, where the language of epidemiology is being used to sanitize the assaults that capital has in all its weapons on people's lives. The crucial part of what I'm trying to say for all three questions is that it's up to us to take these curricula and make them our own so that we are able to best serve our patients, truly best serve them beyond the kind of biomechanics, and I use mechanics as in the kind of term of a car mechanic, biomechanics of current medical care.
Incredibly powerful. Thank you. Thank you, Hassan.
Yeah, I agree to the suggestions on the curriculum. I'd like to add two more authors, Professor Firkov, who was a European pathologist who actually was the founder of public health. And he said, and he's done a lot of good reading, writing, and he said that the doctor or the healthcare worker should be the advocate of the poor, choose side. And the second one is Frantz Fanon, the Algerian African doctor, psychoanalyst, and the first minister of culture in the first free Algerian government. He wrote Les Damnés de Terre, The Wretched of the Earth, and Black Skin, White Masks. So we need to expand on the readings, number one. Number two, I think we need to be conscientious about evidence-based solidarity. We need to read and study. And then when I chose medicine, actually, I was originally going to be a veterinarian, but I didn't have that much of a communication with the animals for some reason. But when I chose medicine, it was actually to try to be a useful partner in the struggle, in the liberation struggle. That was a very conscientious decision by me. And then I thought I had to do two things. I had to get pretty professional at something that could be useful. And I chose emergency medicine and anesthesiology because I wanted to be able to take part in the clinical work. And number two, I needed to ally with the people and not think that I was the one who knew what I needed, but to be a better listener and decolonize my own brain. I'm still working on that. And then I formulated something which I call solidarity medicine as opposed to humanitarian medicine. And for me, solidarity medicine has 4 important components. Number one, only go when you are asked by the locals to come. Don't go because you think they need you. That's the typical colonial attitude, and that's the whole attitude. That's the whole attitude behind the very dangerous relief industry, which is part of the colonial project. So only go, and then you need to go there and ask them what you need, or you need to have a network of contacts, means travel, listen, and learn. Number two, shoulder to shoulder. Go there, stand shoulder to shoulder with them when you're asked to come, but under their leadership and with them in charge of the medical system. Don't duplicate, don't put up some sort of, your organization's West or Field Hospital, whatever. Be part of the system that is the people's system and respect their leadership. Number three, gather data. Be an observer, do scientific observations, publish, and contribute to the knowledge base of the sharp end of the occupation of the colonialism, and publish. And number four, bring the knowledge home to your country and infuse that as a knowledge and experience into your system, because we have a lot to learn from the people in the global south. And be a strong advocate, talk, give lectures, take part in the solidarity work, because now you have become a channel, a potential very important channel of information about the oppression and the character of the oppression. So as a medical worker, you can be a great ally, but you can never substitute for the fight, the struggle of the local people themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mads. Let's take the final 4 questions. Can we start with you?
Hi, so I just wanted to also thank you guys for being here and giving us this space. Right now, I'm actually doing my master's thesis, and I was living in Shatila for 2 months between September and November. And I guess what I wanted to ask you guys is, it's about censorship, but beyond the censorship, how do you guys cope with the censorship, and how do you maintain your resilience? And how can we learn from you guys on navigating that space? And maybe it's about community, but how do we tap into that community, and how do we benefit each other through it?
Excellent. Thank you for that question. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for your work, for your powerful words. I wanted to ask a question about viewing health as a form of Palestinian liberation and looking at it from a lens of self-determination. And we've seen the international community, as you've discussed, contribute with their travel, with their work on the ground. Do you see the role of the international medical community changing in Gaza in the coming few months as we enter the next stage of this war in Gaza? Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for everything that you've done and that you're still doing. So healthcare professionals, practitioners, and academics and researchers are both really important members of civil society who are often still underrepresented in international organization meetings. So I was wondering if you could offer some suggestions about effective ways for civil society, these members, to engage with the international institutions that we have in Geneva or The Hague or New York. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi, Doctor. This question is for Dr. Ghassan. My name is Omar. I'm a plastic surgery president here. And as you're aware, Gaza has lost almost all of its plastic surgeons through displacement or death. And I think this is definitely intentional and symbolic, as plastic surgery represents the reconstruction of the body towards normal life. And what some of you may not be aware is some of the staunchest Zionists in the United States are actually plastic surgeons. And they're pushing policies that actually block American Palestinian students from entering plastic surgery residencies. So what I want to know is, what can we do to effectively support and revitalize the Gaza plastic surgery sector and push it towards a normal and reconstructive efforts? Thank you.
Thank you. I see there's one more who joined. Please go ahead. Final question, and then we'll hand over to the colleagues. Sorry.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So as a public health professional, I know that right now, like obviously our activism is very crucial, but I also understand the importance of planning for the future so that once we're able to deliver aid and set up public health initiatives, we can be ready and have a plan to act as soon as possible. So based on your experience, what will be the biggest public health challenges that you think we'll need to address once that genocide is over, and how can we preemptively prepare?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Would you like to start, and then we'll end with Ghassan? Go ahead.
So many questions. Yes. Number one, resilience. I mean, the way I survive is to get with people like you guys. I don't spend a minute with excuse my language, with assholes. I don't spend a minute with colonialists. I don't spend a minute with pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist, pro-colonial media. I talk to Al Jazeera, I talk to Al Arabiya, I talk to the people who are really on the right side. My life is too short to be in this academic this and that, and what do you mean and what do I mean? I've chosen side. I'm on the side of the oppressed, and I don't have time for that. And through that, I can tell you my main source of resilience and strength and hope and whatever spirit I might have, I owe it to the Palestinian people and to the people of Gaza. Because when I come home from there, I am stronger every time. I am stronger. And I have a deeper belief in humankind. I have a deeper belief in the right struggle of the oppressed people. And I feel galvanized against misery, depression, and hopelessness. I have a beautiful team at home. I have my family, my two fantastic daughters, and I have friends like Dr. Ghassan and my colleagues and my friends in Gaza. They are my hope. Absolutely. These are the people you should stay with, and don't spend too much time on reactionary US media, but try to find good friends like the people here and keep up with the struggle. Number two, the question of the future of healthcare in Gaza, extremely important question. We are now, I fear, seeing a takeover from Israel and the United States, because they want to infuse a whole bunch of field hospitals and NGOs. Many of these NGOs are cover-ups for colonial politics. They are going to take up and set up a double system in Gaza, and this will make Gaza into an NGO-dependent society like Afghanistan, and that is not the way to go about. We need to be very clear that our goal is to rebuild, restore, repair, and reopen the Palestinian healthcare in Gaza. And that's what the Palestinian doctors and the Minister of Health wants. They don't want a doubling system. So beware and be very, very clear in your mind about this. All these field hospitals, all this, the new pier they're making, the Israeli and the US, this pier, this harbor to ship in, none of this is beneficial for the Palestinian sovereignty and the struggle. We need now to rebuild Shifa, to rebuild Nasser Hospital, to re-educate and find places for the medical students in Gaza who have lost their universities now, take them and give them 2 or 3 years of sanctuary here to continue their education. And for the public health needs, it's very simple. Water, food, and human security and human dignity. That's what we need to fight for. You have the keys. You are incredibly important because you can change the world. Ghassan and I, we can work on smaller audiences, but you are the main driving forces. And for study objects, why not follow the money? How much has Harvard invested in Israel? Why not follow the alliances between your leadership and Israeli occupiers? That's where we need you to work. Shukran.
Thank you, Mads. Ghassan, the final words.
So I echo Mads. I learn, there's our people are the school. We learn from them. We learn, my life, the reason why I have been doing this since medical school is how enriching it has been to my life to watch our people struggle and overcome. In this war, I would sit and watch the families that have sought refuge inside the hospital, inside Shifa Hospital, with wonder seeing them live what is supposed to be a humiliating and disempowering experience of becoming internally displaced and sleeping in the floor of a corridor, yet do it with such amazing dignity. I mean, there was a family that slept on a carpet or a rug opposite on the corridor opposite the door of the operating room in the burns unit, Shifa. And the reason they did that, the mother and the father and kids was dependent on on an oxygen concentrator, and they wanted to be next to an electricity socket. And despite that, I used to look at them, trying to, for them not to see me look at them, and just wonder how you can do this with such dignity. And you learn what you read about in the books by watching them. James Baldwin's idea that love is a state of grace. Watching that family, it was the first time, despite reading that book several times, is that I understood what he meant about that. All of this you take home and it makes you a stronger person. Two, there is a process of humanitarianization of genocide that is going on. The humanitarianization of genocide means that you can drop food parcels and then, as the Wall Street Journal today said, send $1 billion worth of ammunition to the Israelis, and you can build a pier and then send some more F-35s. You can destroy all of the hospitals and then send medical teams to work in the one hospital that's still functioning in Gaza. And it takes us to the last question, that they will try to use the humanitarian sector to turn Palestine or to turn Gaza into another Kosovo, a protectorate that is run by NGOs and UN agencies with no sovereignty and no self-determination. And that's the other reason why they've destroyed. There's so much potential for sovereignty in the health system that's why they destroyed the health system. With regards to plastic surgery, until the 2009 war, I was told by my bosses not to mention any of my work on my CV because it would indicate that I wasn't serious as a surgeon about my surgical career. And therefore, what these people that you spoke about will try to do, will try to stop you. But what you should understand is that there's a world of medicine beyond the cloistered bubble of academic institutions, and when you watch Indian doctors work, and you watch South African doctors work, and you watch Malaysian doctors work, you realize how unfortunate it is that the world of medicine is led by these careerist white men who have no concept of health, but view medicine as just an escalator to social mobility. And you just have to keep faith in that medicine allows you to do what any other profession does not allow you to do.
Thank you so much, Ghassan. You want to add one more?
No, I just want to refer to what Dr. Yusuf Abrish told me and Dr. Sobis Cake, who is in the middle of this picture, who used to be the manager, the general director of Shifa. He's now in charge of the Turkish hospital and cancer services in Gaza. And he said, we will rebuild. They can do what they want to us, but we will rebuild and we will raise up. And don't forget that the city arms of Gaza City, which is the largest governorate in Gaza, the city arms of Gaza City has been for centuries the bird phoenix that raises from the ashes stronger and more beautiful than ever. My friends, Palestine has won, Israel has lost. Kuluna Gaza, Gaza, Palestine, Hatta Nasser. Shukran.
Please join me once again in just thanking Ghassan and Mads for the incredible contribution today with a round of applause. I also want to thank Hiba, I want to thank Hiba and the organizers for bringing us together today. I'd like to end perhaps where we started with just one final extract from a poem by Mahmoud Darwish called Silence for Gaza. And then we'll move to the next session. Darwish says, Gaza is not the most beautiful city. Its shore is not bluer than the shores of Arab cities. Its oranges are not the most beautiful in the Mediterranean basin. Gaza is not the richest city. It is not the most elegant or the biggest, but it equals the history of an entire homeland because it is more ugly, impoverished, miserable, and vicious in the eyes of enemies. Because it is the most capable among us of disturbing the enemy's mood and his comfort. Because it is his nightmare. Because it is mined oranges, children without a childhood, old men without old age, and women without desires. Because of all this, it is the most beautiful, the purest, the richest among us, and the one most worthy of love. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.